All right. So the goals of today's coaching is we're going to try to build a solid default turn strategy that is easy to implement. So basically, I'm going to try to give you some tips and then some like basic concepts of if you go into a certain spot and then you're unsure and then you're telling yourself, okay, what sizing should I be using? Like, what should I be betting here? I'm going to help you guys trying to figure that out all on the spot. So if you are ever unsure about what type of sizing, what type of strategies you should be using, then you can come up with a pretty solid strategy in play. We're also going to try to build a solid thought process about how to approach turn, barreling in different scenarios, basically what I just mentioned. We will be focusing again in wide ranges scenarios. So every time we did a coaching, we always talked about wide ranges spot. In one of the first webinar, we talked about which situation should we be studying first. But yeah, so what I was going to say is that like if we want to be improving in a certain situation, we have to focus on the situations that actually will have the biggest impact on your strategy and on your win rate. So those are usually the wide ranges scenarios. So when we talk about C betting now, focusing on button versus big blind makes a lot of sense, and blind versus blind makes a lot of sense. So when we're going to be talking about turn strategy, we're going to be talking about button versus big blind and blind versus blind. We're also going to cover some important factors to consider when trying to decide turn sizings. I already mentioned that. And then we're going to talk about some exploitative adjustments, and we're going to do some hand review from members. I also have a section which is going to be some kind of like a quiz time. So we're going to do like a small quiz, but I'm going to pick some hands that I personally played, and we're going to try to decide what should be my bet sizing on the turn. How should I approach turn situation after we took a look at everything. So let's get into the meat of the subject. There's a couple important questions that you need to ask yourself once you have a turn decision to make. The first one is, who is the turn helping, and how does both ranges connect with that card? So basically what happens is that whenever the turn card really connects with the board and really connects with big blind's range, usually it's not a spot where we want to use really big sizings. Because we're basically saying, okay, this turn really helps you. You make some flushes, you make some two pairs, some straights, and all that type of stuff. And I still want to be betting something like a strong top pair. So basically what I want to be doing is I want to take a sizing that fits well my betting range, and also acknowledge the fact on how it connects with big blind's range. So basically, if the turn is a blank, we can afford to be putting a lot more money with our value range than if the turn connects super well with the big blind's range. So second question you need to ask yourself is, what should my value range be? So, I mean, if it's a spot that you want to be betting super aggressively, I mean, you're not going to be having the same sizing as is the spot you are actually facing. You are betting a super tight range. So those kind of questions about like, okay, how wide am I going to be value betting on the turn here can really help you try to decide like what sizing really fits your range well. And the third sizing is the third question, is what is the sizing that my value range prefers? So the sizing, like I just mentioned, really depends on how wide or narrow we want to be value betting. Now let's move on to the other one. Okay, so now I already talked about that, but what I want to say is that you should be using one sizing for your entire turn betting range. We talked about it on the flop, where, okay, when we choose a sizing, we should be betting our entire range with that specific sizing. And again, I want to put some emphasis on that in the sense that if you start splitting your range on the flop, it's going to be really hard for you to balance both sizings and the checking range on the flop to the turn to the river. So what I strongly suggest, and I cannot put more emphasis on it, I know I'm probably annoying you guys to actually talk about that every coaching, but I think it's super important. We have to use one sizing for our entire betting range on the flop, and then one on the turn, and then on the river, we can start splitting our range between two sizing. And I think the most important reason for that is that when you use one sizing for the flop and the turn, you're going to have a super good idea about what you get to the river with and how to split your range and put which hands into the big size, which hands into the smaller side. If you start splitting already on the flop, I mean, you're going to have absolutely no idea what you get to the river with. And I mean, it's understandable because it's really complicated. Yes, Amar, I'm saying Yumi. I mean, one sizing for a specific turn card. So for example, on a specific turn, we might only overbet or check with our betting range. And on another turn card, we could just bet something like 2/3 or 3/4 spot. But when we bet, let's say overbet, we only overbet. And then when we bet 3/4, we only bet 3/4. Young Dai saying, what about when the board pairs on the turn? Yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to be talking about that. So basically, like in solvers, when you're taking a look into certain spots, you're going to see that like solvers like multiple sizings, right? So we have to take into account basically like those questions I just talked about, and also what makes the most sense for our value range and our betting range. Yes, always there's going to be some hands in your range that would like to bet smaller, bigger. That's totally normal. But we want to try to maximize the EV of our entire range. And then on the river, let's say a hand wanted to bet bigger on the turn because, I mean, it's at the top of your value range. Then that's why we start splitting on the river. And then we can add an overbet strategy as well as a standard 2/3 to 3/4 spot strategy. And also what we're going to do next month is we're going to be talking about river play and which sizing to split your range on the river, like what type of hands to put in the smaller size, which hands to put in the bigger size, and all that type of stuff. Okay. 859906 is asking, what about when we play versus fish? I usually just play my hand, and you should keep doing that. I mean, when we play, like all the things we talk about here is to try to build a good solid strategy. So to try to build a good default strategy so that you know how to approach most situations. When you are actually facing a weaker player or a recreational, I mean, do we want to be playing our range? No. We want to be playing our hand, and you basically play your hand face up and you bet the amount that your actual hand wants to bet. So you try to maximize the EV of your hand because you're playing against a weaker player, and he's not gonna adjust versus the sizing. He's not gonna notice if you bet smaller or bigger with a certain type of hand. So basically, you just play your hand. You play super basic, and it's quite easy. But what we want to do here is we try to build a pretty solid strategy and how to approach. And then when we see, okay, we're facing a pretty bad player, then we say, okay, my default strategy would be to overbet with my entire range here, but I'm going to play exploitatively, and then I'm going to bet this sizing or this sizing because I'm facing a weaker player. So yeah, does anybody have any questions about this? Okay, so let's move on. So now we're going to be taking a look into button versus big blind first. So in position, it's one of the most important spots to master. It will have the most significant impact on your win rate. If you can play this spot like a beast, I mean, you're just going to be making a lot of money because, I mean, it's a situation that comes up quite often, and you're playing in position versus a big blind's capped range. We can put a lot of pressure there. A lot of the concepts can be applied into other spots as well. So you guys are going to see that we're going to be spending a bit more time in position than out of position, because the only reason is that a bunch of the concepts are actually true for both. We're going to see some small differences. Also, we're not going to be covering all the boards into this coaching because I didn't want to make this coaching too long. I want to make sure that it's a duration that you guys are still actively listening and actively implicated in it. So basically what I did is I left a couple situations that I already started preparing it, but I'm going to be releasing a video shortly, which will be covering the other spot for barreling turn as well. So basically we're going to be focusing into c-betting turn after in situations that we c-bet our entire range on the flop. So we are on the button, we c-bet our entire range on the flop, and then we're looking to bet turn. So we're going to be taking a look into 3 situations. And now let's take a look at the first situation. So we open the button, big blind calls. Board is ace, 8, deuce, flush draw. We are c-betting range for 1/3 pot. Big blind calls, and then the turn is the 6. So the first question we ask ourselves is, who is the turn helping and how does both ranges connect with that card? So would you guys say it's a good or bad card? Or neutral? Okay, so I'm happy to see that nobody said that it's a bad card, because I mean it's a pretty good card in the sense that some ace-6 off improves, right? Ace-6 suited as well. Some ace-6 suited. It doesn't really have ace-6 off. It doesn't really have deuce-6 suited as well. So it's. We have 8-6 suited as well. We have all the things that he improves to. We all have. Plus we have all the really strong hand as well, all the strong pocket, the top pairs that he doesn't have, like ace jack. Plus we have pocket aces as well. So it's a spot that, would you guys feel comfortable putting in money or not really? Yeah. Okay. So we target the first question. So basically, it doesn't really improve big blind's range. It's pretty neutral. So we can say that it's a good card for us because we have a range advantage. Now, the second question should we ask is, what should my value range be here? What do you guys think? Should we be betting wide? Should we be betting tight? Should we still be betting something like 8x, pocket nines? All right. So I see that a lot of you guys have the right thought process. Those spots, okay, we have to take a look into both ranges. So whenever we actually see bet here on the flop our entire range, we will get to the turn with a wide range, right? So we will still have our entire opening range on the turn. When big blind actually calls, he's going to have folded a big portion of his range, right? So he's going to have folded some stuff that didn't connect with it. Even it's going to be we can agree that big blind's going to be overfolding as well. So, he's going to get to the turn with a pretty strong range, and we're going to be getting to the turn with a pretty wide range because we actually c-bet our entire range. So it's not a spot, especially when the board is high, that we can just go and bet super wide here. Whenever we c-bet range on ace-8 deuce rainbow, we get to the turn with a wide range, big blind, he's going to have folded some stuff, and most of the population actually overfold. So he's going to get to the turn with a stronger range than he should. So that means that we have to polarize ourselves and bet something like a strong top pair or better. So a lot of you guys were saying something like ace 10 plus. I would even go with something like ace 9. Ace 9, I would still feel pretty comfortable into putting in as a pretty big bet. And what sizing would you guys use here? Okay, so I see a lot of you guys are using the overbet. I see a couple 75%. Guys, what happens here is that my first question is this. When you are betting 1/3 pot on ace, eight, deuce flush draw, and we talk about your value range, like, did your value range lose value on the flop with the sizing that we choose? Yes. So on the turn, what happens is that we are not betting a wide range. We are betting a strong range. So we're not betting ace five. We're not betting pocket kings. We're not betting 8-7. We're only betting ace jack plus. And all that range lost value on the flop and wants to get it back on the turn. So it's using an overbet strategy on the turn. I mean, I would be super comfortable betting something like ace 9, ace 10 plus. Yes. Something like ace 9, ace 10, like definitely can go in the overbet strategy for sure. But that's basically the thought process behind it, is that when you're overbetting here, you want to get that value back that you lost on the flop. As far as the overbet size, I would try to use a sizing that still puts villain into a tough spot. So basically, I see a lot of people use like a 2x spot strategy. I think that's not the right strategy to go with. Why? The reason is that, like, we make villain's life pretty easy. Like, once we start betting so huge, like, he can even start folding hands like ace 3 or ace 4, if we go in with a 2x overbet on the turn, which is not what we want to do. So basically what I would do is I would stick with something like a 130 to 150 sizing. And then let's say the turn is a bit drier like this, right? So, like, doesn't bring second flush draw. Like, we could go something like 130, and then let's say the turn is like the 7 of clubs. Then we can just size up a bit on the turn, because there's going to be so many rivers that we cannot value bet anymore, that we want to charge big blinds range on the turn. So something between 130 and 150, I think, makes a lot of sense here. Okay, if people overfold to overbet, do we not overbet so we can extract more value? That's a really good question, Alfred. Exploitatively, so this is like again, we're always talking about like a default strategy, how we should approach certain situation. If you know that people are actually overfolding massively versus the overbet, I mean, there are some spots that in my overbetting range, it's going to be super bluff heavy, because I think that people are overfolding versus that. So I'm going to be bluffing quite a lot there. And then I'm going to be using a smaller sizing with my value range, because I want to make sure I get called. But again, this is exploitatively. I think it makes a lot of sense, Alfred, to switch some value hands to the smaller sizing, or to the bluffing range with the bigger sizing, if you think that people are overfolding quite a lot. But I mean, you need to make sure you have a read for that. And yeah, but it's a really good thought that you had. Young guy saying, is out of position still on cap though? I mean, yes, but he doesn't have that, like we have all the strong hands that he has. So we have the ace deuce, ace 8, pocket deuce. We have pocket sixes. We have ace 6 suited. So like, maybe he's still uncapped, but the thing is that he's going to be raising some strong hands on the flop as well. So we can discount some really strong hand that he can have, but we are actually betting all of our strong hands on the flop. So we get to the turn with every strong hand, but he's going to get with maybe, I don't know, 60, 70%. Okay, what about draws? One piece saying, what about draws? I mean, like you're going to be betting, like, so basically here we're going to be betting a hand like ace 9, ace 10, ace jack plus, right? And then we're going to be betting the natural draws first. So if you have a hand like 9-7, if you have a hand like 7-5, a hand like 9-10, a hand like 4-5, those would bet first, and then we can have hands like flush draws as well. So we have plenty of natural bluffs here. So we don't need to go crazy and be betting hands like Jack 10 of heart, for example. I mean, because we have plenty of natural bluffs. When we have less natural bluffs, we need to include more blocker type of hand. But in this specific turn card, with our buttons range being quite wide, I mean, we're going to have hands like 5-3 suited, 4-5, like 7-9, 7-5, all the diamond draws. So basically, like those are the first draws that you want to be betting. Yeah, Alex, Alex is asking on double flush draw, I would go 150. I still don't want to go like crazy big and just bet like 200 or 250% pot. Just because, I mean, we kind of make his life a bit easier. Okay, let me just check the other questions. Should you check slightly more hands if you use 150% sizing? I mean, it shouldn't change that drastically if you just go with 150 to 130. So like those details, like I would not really put too much thought into it because I don't think it's going to make a really, really big difference. So like even if you go 150 instead of 130, I think it's fine. As long as you don't go something like 200 and then you kind of make his life quite easy. What to do is asking, will you check back some weaker flush draws to be protected on diamond runouts? For sure. So basically, like we can start checking back some flush draws that actually have a bit more showdown value. So hands like king, queen of diamonds, we can start checking because I mean we're gonna have a bunch of flush draws here. So I mean we have to be careful about like which flush draws we're gonna be betting. So basically, like we can start turning like some hands like 6-5 or 6-4 of diamonds, you know, like a turn pair plus some flush draw. We can start turning those into a bluff on the turn. But the better ones like king 6 or queen 5, we can start checking, and then we can start checking some like king queen, king jack of diamonds, and then bet the lower showdown value ones. So I mean we have to be checking some flush draws as well. And usually like the really weak flush draw, like really, really weak, we can start checking. Because those are pretty nice check back, and then we can bluff rivers with it, and then we can still have some flushes when the river completes the flush. And also, let's say we have like 5-3 of diamonds, for example, and then we overbet turn, and then the river's a flush, and then if all the money goes in on the river, I mean we're pretty much always dead. So we try to build a pot like with flush draws that will dominate villain's flush draw. So I don't like building huge pot with weak flush draws because by the time that like you hit your hand and all the money goes in, you're going to be behind quite often. So hands like king 3, you know, king 3 of diamonds, those are the type of hands I would be over betting for sure. Because I mean, we have less showdown value than king queen, because let's say we have 2 overs to the 8, which is great. And then with king 3, we have a bit less showdown value. So basically, I would start over betting hands like king 3, king 4 of diamonds before king jack and king queen. Okay, let me just check. Okay, there's a lot of messages. Yes, I mean 4 and 5 high flush draws. I mean the weaker flush draws. I mean 4-5, I would probably still bet because you have a double gutter to go along with it. So hitting a 7 or a 3 is great. But if you have a hand like 3-4 of diamonds or 3-5 of diamonds, those would be candidate that I would start checking turn. Yes, we have a gut shot to go along as well, but I mean we have like 5 high or 4 high flush draw. So quite cool hands that we can actually check back turn and then bet river, and also have some flushes. When a flush run out gets on the river. Also, we're still going to have some strong flushes, like some nut flushes, like king queen or king jack of diamonds. Because those are have more showdown value. All right. Yes, Cesar, we can still check behind a hand like 5-3 of diamonds, because you're going to have so many combo draws. Like you're going to have like 7-9 of diamonds, 7-5 of diamonds, 5-4 of diamonds is even better because you have double gutter. And you have 5-high flush draw, but you have at least a double gutter as well. So we have to be selective with our bluff. Also, we have to think about, like, are we betting a wide range? Like, on the turn here, we're probably betting something like 25% of the time, because we use something like an overbet, and also we bet like ace jack or ace 10 or ace 9 plus. So that means that our range is quite tight, and we cannot just blindly bet all of our draws, because that way, we're just going to be over bluffing. Yes, Maldwin is saying if we have 7-9 off with the 9 of diamonds, or 9-10 off with the 9 of diamonds, those are pretty good candidates that we can start turning hands into a bluff. Because you need those, like, that's what happens when you're playing like people that are pretty face up and are playing at lower stakes, is that when you're betting, let's say this turn, you need to be betting all sorts of hands. So basically, like if you only bet like diamond draws, right? And like the 7 of diamonds gets there. Like 9-10 gets there, 4-5 gets there, all the diamond gets there. Like what else are you bluffing with? Like nothing. So you want to be betting hands like, let's say like 9-10 with the 10 of diamonds, so that like on completing flush runouts you still have some bluffs, or a hand like potentially like 6-5 of clubs that we can start over betting as well. Like turn pair, sometimes we can start over betting. So we need to start bluffing like a bunch of different hands on the turn, in order to be able to still have some bluffs on many different runouts on the river, which is not the case versus the players we are facing. So like when everything gets there, guys, just don't think about it and just overfold. Because if you're saying to yourself, villain needs to have like to turn like unnatural type of hands into a bluff in order to have some bluffs, those are the spots that we have to overfold massively. Eric is asking, do you bet no equity draws? On this turn, we have so many natural stuff, like so many natural draws, that we don't need to be betting a hand like Jack 10 of heart. Because we have plenty of natural bluffs to go along with. So the first hands that you want to be bluffing are always the natural bluff, which has some equity. The better bluffs, yes. So let's say the board is ace, 8, deuce, rainbow, turn is a deuce. The only natural bluff we have is 3-4, 5-4, and 5-3. Those are the only natural bluff that we have. So in those situations, what you're going to see is that it's going to start using unnatural stuff like blocker type of hands to start turning into a bluff. So you would see a lot more like Jack 10, Jack 9, 10-9 on ace, 8, deuce, turn deuce, rainbow. You would see a lot more of those blocker type of hands because, there's just no natural bluffs. So we need to start using like unnatural stuff. But on this specific turn, for example, like we have so many bluffs that we don't need to be betting no equity hands, if that makes sense.